Welcome to Healthcare IT Today. I'm John Lynn, together with my colleague and friend Colin Hung. The world of technology and healthcare are ever changing in new and novel ways, and that's why we love this stuff. So join us as we discuss the latest healthcare and health IT news, meshed together in new ways, which help generate ideas and new perspectives. Plus, we'll have a little fun along the way. On today's episode, we'll be taking a look back at the major trends and stories of 2022. And today's episode is sponsored by Care Cognitics. And be sure to follow the show on Twitter at the hashtag HITSM and our personal accounts at TechGuy and at Colin_Hung. Plus, check out our 17 years of health IT blog content at healthcareittoday.com. Well, can you believe it's already December?
No, I can't. We blinked and 2022 went right by us.
I think the problem in 2022 for me, and I've been talking with a lot of people about this, is that we didn't get our summer break. Like, it didn't slow down at all for us. And talking to a lot of people, it was the same thing. I think it was because all the conference organizers were stuffing it in the summer. We wanted to make up trips in the summer, whatever it is, like it didn't stop. And usually there is a bit of a lull, and we didn't have it this year.
I would agree. This summer was probably my busiest ever. And it's not just because I was working, but also just there were events, there were things that are happening in the summer where usually it's a quiet time. You're right. So it's been relentless this year for sure.
For sure.
So, John, let's get to the first question. I'm dying to hear what you think. So, of all the stories that came across our desks in 2022, which is the one that sticks out the most for you?
Yeah, so the top story for me as I look back is really the cooling off of the funding market. And what's interesting is it's a cooling off, but it didn't go totally dead. So I think that's the other interesting dynamic that's at play. But the outrageous valuations that were happening and the $50, $100, $200 million raises that were happening, those stopped and just cooled off in a really big way. Now, it'll be interesting to see how those play out over the next 3 years, right? Because when you raise 100 to 200 million, you better be going big. So you got to spend that money. You got to go after it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with those. But yeah, the way the funding market has changed and the dynamics around raising money just in the last 6 months even has just cooled off in a big way. Now, what's interesting is there is still a lot of cash out there. They're just demanding more of the organization that's raising the money to justify getting the money, and they're getting lower valuations. So some of those organizations are saying, do I need to go now? I could just wait. Do I go cash flow, et cetera? So there is money still out there. So it's not like digital health isn't being invested in, but it's being invested in a different way now.
Yeah, no, I totally would agree with you there. As evidenced as the recent health conference that we went to, there were a lot of people a little unhappy with the valuations they were getting and the not a lot of return phone calls. It's just that it's a tough market. And I think also it's a realization that, some of the sky high expectations that some of these companies have were probably not going to be achievable in the time frame that they were predicting. Right.
Yeah. The question is, are they going to fail and going to ruin the funding market for the future? That's something to watch out for too.
That's true. For me, John, the big story that sticks out in my mind is it got to be the Amazon acquisition of One Medical, right? First of all, that was an unbelievable valuation, over $3 billion. I didn't see that coming, first of all, but just that the whole thought of, wow, like the depth and breadth of Amazon's entry into healthcare is just getting stronger by the minute. And so to me, that's the sort of, it wasn't so much that, hey, this was an amazing deal. It's just more of what that deal signified for me. And that's why it sticks out. That sticks out for me.
I would simplify it. Amazon has too much cash. Healthcare's so expensive. It's such a massive industry, and they need a part of it. So I don't know. I mean, when you look at it that way, you're like, yeah, that makes sense, right? We'll see how it plays out. We'll see what they do with it. But I'm not one to bet against Amazon. If I'm betting on any of the big tech players, I think there's an episode that I actually said this, a while ago. Amazon is my bet. So for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah. So the other one that I think is interesting that, actually interesting, your comment about Amazon acquiring One Medical applies, but to me, it's the workforce issues that are happening across all of healthcare. It was the biggest topic at every conference this fall. It was something we've talked about probably too much here on this show that we have, but I would say workforce is a big problem. And the question I have is, if Amazon's, with One Medical taking all these doctors and Walmart's taking all these doctors, Optimum, I saw just past 30,000 doctors that no one knows about, right? Like if those are have all the doctors, are any of the healthcare organizations like the True Health Systems, practices, et cetera, will they be able to get doctors? And is that going to create an even bigger problem? I think that's something to watch out for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, how you couldn't avoid the workforce challenge anywhere in 2022. It was the biggest story by far, and that was the most talked about topic and this, in the hallways and in sessions. It would definitely, you're right. And as we know, it's not just the clinical side, right? It's the back office, it's the administrative. Like people are just not going into healthcare like they used to, and it's a big problem.
And the tech people that can go to other industries and get paid more.
Exactly. And I think that's the bigger issues, that the jobs are there, the need is there, but we in healthcare just haven't been caught up in terms of the salaries and the benefits that we pay. The other story for me, John, is 21st Century Cares Act. I think I've heard more vendors talk about that in the latter half of 2022 than I thought I would. Right, like it's amazing to see how that act has really spurred changes to processes, procedures, practices. It's also, caused a lot of change on the product side of a lot of companies, whether it was, I spoke to Greenway about some of the things that they're doing. I spoke to Scanslated most recently, talking about how the act has really spurred a lot of adoption of what they're doing. I don't know if this was the intended effect, but it's definitely having an effect on the market.
Yeah, it does seem to be opening up doors for people that they thought were closed before. And I think maybe there's a little change of mindset for the healthcare organizations. I actually think about TEFCA and QHINs. I remember a couple of years back walking through some city at a conference to grab lunch with Shahid Shah, our colleague and friend. And I remember him saying TEFCA is going to have this big impact. And I'm like, it doesn't have teeth. Who cares? Right. And I was wrong. I was right in one front. It doesn't have teeth, but the QHINs, I think, could have a big impact, will be interesting to watch. So, I think I'll be watching that space as well, because that really came to fruition in 2022. Whereas before we'd never even heard of the term QHIN. What is a QHIN? Which we're still trying to figure that out. But
when you know, you let me know. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of know. So how about this? What is the most surprising or unexpected trend in health IT that you've seen in 2022?
For me, hands down, it's got to be the actual operationalizing of consolidation of vendors. Like we've heard about this for years. To me, it was always talk, but this year in 2022, I spoke to more health system CIOs and vendors who were just talking about how there was this proactive movement inside provider organizations to whittle down the number of vendors they deal with. Yeah. And whether that was like, people who, selling consumables, like for the clinical side, but also IT. We were hearing that finally they were getting around to like asking the question, why do I have 5 patient communication tools in here? Like, I really only need 1 or 2. Right. And so let's look at these 5 that I have, and we're going to pick 1 or 2 and we're going to go with it. And like, why do I have 4 different cybersecurity vendors? And I should probably only have 1, right? And talking to some organizations, there was a lot more of top-down forcing, like, hey guys, we're consolidating on this one platform. So going forward, you're not buying these other ones. You got to adopt these ones. So to me, that was the big surprising story of 2022.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it's twofold. One is the consolidation of the provider organizations saying, we don't need 5 communication vendors, let's do 1, or security. Like you said, I think that's true. But I think also on the side of the vendors that realize, hey, I need to roll up every security company so that they can just work with me rather than with 5 vendors. So we've seen that, it's kind of a funky metric, really. When you look at healthcare IT today, every day in 2022, for at least the last 6 months or more, we've posted a funding announcement or a merger and acquisition on the site. And for a certain period, we posted 2 a day, because the acceleration of that consolidation had happened so much. So it's interesting to see the money flow and the mergers that are happening. I would take a little different angle on this as far as, things that surprised me. And this one really, I first heard it actually at the Vive conference from Stephanie Lahr. And she was said to me when we were talking about some automation they were doing. And she was automating the faxes, and we're like, okay, this is great. And I was like, well, are your staff afraid? And she's like, no, John, they're really accepting of it because now they're doing 3 jobs. And so, this shift of like automation is feared because, hey, it's going to take my job, to now, please bring the automation or I'm going to suffer. Like that change in mindset was shocking and surprising to me.
No, you're right. And I totally agree with you. In fact, that was one of my secondary stories as well, is, the acceptance of AI, as a helper, as opposed to someone who's going to take my job or something that's going to take my job. I think, unfortunately, the workforce challenge has been so brutal in healthcare that now they're like, no, bring this on, because you're right. I've been tasked with taking the job, doing the work of my colleague who left, right? And they're not hiring. So like, I'll take automation because that's just going to make my life bearable. Now, thankfully, the vendors of this kind of automation and AI have also been more realistic, I think, than in years past, where they're not promising that, hey, it's going to read an entire scan and detect cancer. No. It's going to prioritize this queue for you. I think on the other side, I think the reason why it's also being accepted more is because vendors have been a lot more realistic and being able to live up to the hype and how they've been pitching their products. So I agree with you. That is a bit of a surprising thing. I thought we would still be resisting a lot of the automation and the AI in 2022.
Yeah, well, and it's been AI everything. In fact, including the cancer detection. I've seen a number of companies on the recent trip I did to Israel that they're doing some really interesting detection. In one case, it was pathology with ibex, and they go in and they look at it and help have AI to assist the radiologist with, or the pathologist, to be able to see any potential risk, and it augments them rather than doing the full diagnosis. To your point, they're stepping it back and saying, hey, let's do this in a thoughtful way that partners with the pathologist and makes them more effective versus trying to replace the pathologist. So I think that's a good step in the right direction. But they're applying AI to everything. That might be a little shocking as well. The other one that kind of stands out for me is the fact that people just kind of threw COVID to the wind and said, yep, let's go back to conferences. Like, I think there's been a little bit of reticence on the provider side, maybe not because of the risk, but because of the budget and the appearance of, hey, what does this look like if I go back to a conference when my health system is still having challenges with workforce, et cetera. So there's still some reticence in that regard, but COVID hasn't stopped anything. And it's pretty shocking how it went from, you need to be vaccinated, you need to do a test, and blah, 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 like this whole protocols and masking, to now, just come, we'll see you there. I mean, that's a little shocking to me that it shifted that fast. Although maybe I shouldn't be shocked with, we love freedom in America.
No, but it's not just America, it's worldwide, right? Like,
yeah.
Although in Canada, the last restrictions only got lifted in October, but I remember going to HIMSS and Vive in the early part of the year, and I had to get myself cleared, right? And I had to prove I was triple vaccinated or double vaccinated, and we're all still wearing masks for the most part at that moment. But then it just, something happened when summer hit. It just poof, right, on both sides of the border and around the world. Like, we just said, what, we're going to learn how to live with it, and we're going back.
Yeah, it's a big change. It's surprising how quickly it happened, I think.
It's true. Hey, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Healthcare IT Today with John Lynn and Colin Hung. Today, we are talking about the major trends and stories for 2022.
And a big thank you to our sponsor, Care Cognitics. As a local Vegas company, I've worked closely with their founder and have a small ownership piece of Care Cognitics as they work to bring casino loyalty and rewards principles to healthcare. If you have a problem driving patient action, Care Cognitics can help you motivate patients to perform those healthy behaviors. If you want to learn more about how they're driving patient behavior and applying these casino loyalty and experience principles, check it out at carecognitics.com.
John, let's continue on here. What was the topic in 2022 that you wished we had seen more of in the year?
Well, it's interesting, when I go to a conference, everyone's like, so what's hot? What are you hearing? And a part of me usually replies like, I'm so deep in this. Could you surprise me at a conference? Like I would love for that to happen. But anyways, that said, I think there's two things that I thought we'd hear more about. One of them we kind of did, but one of them we didn't as much as I thought, and that was ERP. ERP, I thought would start to become a really hot topic with CIOs because the ERP infrastructure is aging. Many of them implemented 20 years ago. Supply chain has become so much more important because of COVID and supply chain issues. And I thought we would just have this like wave of, hey, I need to implement my ERP, almost like we did with EMR, right? I thought but maybe I'm just on the front end of the wave and it's still coming. But yeah, I was surprised that we didn't hear more, and I thought we would. And to be quite frank, we're probably running on these old ERP systems, and we're missing out on opportunities to really automate and improve things like supply chain management and connecting that to the EHR to improve clinical care as well. So that's the one ERP. I was shocked that we didn't hear more about it.
I wasn't on my radar, so I totally missed that. But
you would have been shocked to hear about it too.
I would have been shocked to hear about it too. Yes, but no, for me, there are two things. One, I wish we had heard more about patient engagement in 2022. We definitely heard more about patient access and patient volumes and trying to increase those and bring people back. But I didn't really hear a lot of talk. I thought I would hear more talk around patient engagement and trying to engage these patients more in their care and, pushing more into, in terms of engaging them with content and education in order to make sure that they stick with whatever program or treatment that they were being given. Because the last thing we need is these same patients coming back in again, because we already had a capacity problem as it was in the early part of the year. So I didn't hear as much about that. I think partially is because it still maybe has a aura of, oh, it's a nice to have. And in this, time of financial uncertainty and still we have COVID and everything, I think it kind of fell off and fell down to the bottom of the priority list. So, but I wish we had heard more about patient engagement.
That's funny. I don't want to jump topics too much, but I might add it to my tired list. Like this patient engagement's so generic. So I'm just tired of hearing and it's interesting how that even bridges over into the pharma side and they talk about patient engagement for clinical trials and things like that. So I think that term has been abused. I might add it to my tired list, but the idea of patients being more involved, I'm all for it. And making them proactive pieces of the care, that makes sense. But I think patient engagement might be a burnt out term for me. The one I think was talked about a little bit, but I wish there would have been more action on. And this is what we'd seen more results from this. And they're kind of paired together, but the two are telehealth reimbursement. Like, why is that not why we have the data now? And I haven't seen any data that said that telehealth was worse than in-person visits. So why haven't we looked at the data and said, yeah, we can reimburse for this and we should. If you want to do this, fine, carve out some areas where you're like, no, we don't want to do it. But for the majority of things, I think we've proven telehealth is just as good as another, and it's worthy of reimbursement. So I don't know why we didn't have that. And I'm also really angry that medical licensure is still at the state level, that we haven't been able to get some movement. Some they might call it pork in Washington, that they add on a medical licensure rule across, that if you're licensed in one state, you can, you're approved in all the states. It's sad to me that we are still dealing with this, and we probably will deal with it for a long time to come. I wish we would have heard more people saying this is a travesty and needs to be corrected, and we didn't. Probably because the state license boards are making money off it, but it's just frustrating.
It's funny. Like in both of these cases, we hope some change happened. In one case, change did happen, but now we're rolling it back. And
exactly.
In another case, the change didn't even happen, right? And and we've been dealing with a year of workforce challenges. I would have thought, like you, that we would have heard about this. We would have had some movement on the licensure issue, but it didn't happen. And yeah, I don't understand the whole telehealth thing. It's happening but it's happening worldwide. It's not just a US problem. Like in other countries as well, Australia, Canada, the UK, they're rolling back reimbursements on telehealth, which it doesn't make any sense. You got a more efficient, more effective way to deliver care. People have learned how to use it and actually are okay with it. And the most important, clinicians were actually comfortable with it finally, right? They were like, hey, this could actually work. And now you're going to roll it back. Like that's, to me, you're just going to undo all of the gain that we had. And I get that it doesn't apply everywhere. And you're right. I think there may be some exceptions, and maybe, some areas where maybe you want to claw some of it back where it just doesn't make any sense, right? But for the majority of the check-ins, the script renewals, and some of these other things, like it was the perfect mechanism for it. So anyways, John, let's move to the final question. I'm interested in this one. What's your tired list? What is what's on here in terms of terms or words that you're just like, man, we got to stop talking about this stuff in 2023?
Yeah, I was gonna say on the tired list, I'd put myself, but it's been a busy year. In fact, I'd put all of us on the tired list. Everyone I meet seems to be a little tired, although there's some exciting stuff happening too. So it's a mixture of excitement and tired, because there's so much to do, but there's also so much being done. So that's kind of cool. But I'd say the one that I'm most tired of is we're gonna disrupt everything. And you're like, yeah, healthcare doesn't get disrupted. Like, you know what I mean? Like, trying to think, when was the last time healthcare like truly got disrupted? There were incremental innovations over time, certainly. And that, there are certain things that, of course, disrupted healthcare over long periods, but there's, I can't think of any examples that like massively came in and just disrupted healthcare. So yeah, I'm done with the disruption term. Like, yeah, we can add value, we can provide a new model, that's fine, but you're not going to disrupt the behemoth. I mean, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's Goliath and you can throw him in the temple, and like David did with Goliath, but I don't think so. Healthcare is shockingly resilient and difficult to disrupt.
I agree with you. One of my tired terms is innovative. And I see that sprinkled like pixie dust on a lot of the booth vendors and a lot of the materials that we get. Like, we got an innovative solution for this and innovative solution for that. And like, really, is it truly innovative or evolutionary, right? Or iterative, right? Like, hey, like I get it, but I get that maybe you've done something new and novel and somewhat unique. That's fine. I mean, I don't doubt that people are doing innovative things, but that word has been overused in my mind in 2022. I hope we don't see it in 2023. But
it is tough, right? Because innovation is a question of perspective, right?
Sure,
Like, what were
exactly
you
right.
doing before? So, I mean, I guess, implementing digital fax was innovative when you had a real fax machine, but is it really? Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, the other term I think is tired for me is I really don't want to see the word digital transformation again. For me, it's just transformation, right? Like we should do it. And digital is just one of the mechanisms, because if you actually dig down deeper into what happens in a supposedly digital transformation, most of the work actually has to do with changing the workflow in the process. Like it's only because you're implementing a new digital solution to kind of power that, but it's not the digital solution itself that's doing it. And I think by saying it as a digital transformation, you kind of hide and give the wrong impression that it's not going to require you to change your operations, which to me is actually what is really happening here. So I like what's happening. I like the fact that people are doing it. I just think the label is wrong. It should be just transformation. And oh, by the way, it just so happens we're implementing some digital tools along with it. But digital transformation to me is not really what's happening out there.
So you probably want to get rid of digital health too and just call it health. Is that fair as well?
I would say yes. That'll probably be my tired term for 2023. But
death for digital. No, which I think that's the problem, is that some people look at it and say, well, it's just transformation, we're not embracing digital. No. The whole point of transformation is embrace whatever model, digital or otherwise, that changes it. So that makes sense. I would look at two terms that still, if someone sends me a pitch with these, I'm like, roll my eyes, archive the email, like these are game changing. It's like, first of all, is healthcare a game? Second of all, are you really changing the game? That's a high bar. So I think you're brave to use that and maybe stupid, but is it actually effective, right? And then the second one, which is somewhat related, is turnkey. I actually think we talked about this on a previous episode. It's like, is it really turnkey? I mean, you can make some stuff easier, right? It doesn't have to be a total drag, and you don't have to go through 7 committees, because you can use the cloud and different things. But no health system implements a turnkey solution. It's a process that has to be done, and for the safety of patients, for security, for aligning with priorities, etc. So I think you have to be really careful with turnkey. It can be as simple to implement. It could be all sorts of things. It could but turnkey. I haven't seen many turnkey solutions in healthcare, and I don't think we will.
I can't, totally agree with you there. I can't remember the last time anyone said they implemented a solution turnkey in healthcare. It always has to be adapted in some way, customized in some way, personalized in some way. But I don't think definitely it's not helping you stand out by saying that you're a turnkey solution anymore.
Yeah, but there is a turnkey way to be effective at your digital transformation as you embrace AI. And the game-changing thing is to listen to the Healthcare IT Today podcast episodes. I think that
There you go, John. I'm impressed that you worked them all into a sentence there and actually somewhat made some sense.
If you want to disrupt your workflow and enhance your game-changing ability to do it, listen to the Healthcare IT Today episode.
That is very true. And actually, that is the best way to end this episode of Healthcare IT Today. Thank you to all of you who tuned in and listened. You can find more details about our show by checking out the programs page on healthcarenowradio.com. And please share your voice and engage with the community at healthcareittoday.com and on Twitter using the hashtag HITSM. I'm Colin Hung, along with my Health IT collaborator, John Lin. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.